Again, no meaningful input differences developmentally are predicted, right? We don't predict the outcomes to differ on the basis of the input across SES. So now what? Well, now we should probably measure the learning outcomes in children across SES, for in this case syntactic islands knowledge, to see if in fact there are any learning outcome differences or not, right? We predict there not to be, but is that right? One caveat about this, which is important to keep in mind, is if there are in fact differences, it could be due to other factors besides the input. So for example, language processing ability is known to differ across SES, with low SES children sometimes slower in their ability to process their language input compared to their high SES counterparts. So what this means is if low SES children are less able to harness the information in their input, even if it's there in the input, they might be delayed in acquiring syntactic island knowledge, right? So what we might do, if there aren't outcome differences, perhaps after any language processing ability differences have resolved, so maybe you test them when we think that their language processing ability has caught up, right? But then, irrespective of when we're doing this, if we find that there aren't outcome differences as predicted, then this supports the idea that syntactic island input quality is the same, or is developmentally equivalent across SES, right? So, this is why it's important to measure the outcome. And in particular, the judgment patterns is really what we want to be measuring, because that's what we generated from our model. Now, something else that's important that we discovered by using this method is that key building blocks involving complementizer phrasal that are predicted to come from a very specific wh dependency in low SES child-directed speech, that trace violation. What do you think that happens? Again, that's ungrammatical, or often judged to be ungrammatical or less acceptable in the high SES dialect, right? But that's supposed to be where it's coming from in low SES input. So if that's the case, this means that low SES adults are predicted to view this wh dependency as grammatical, right? We're expecting them to generate it, to use it, to say it to their children, right? And it's the one that contains that crucial building block. So we better see, it seems important to find out if low SES adults do in fact think this dependency is grammatical, right? Because again, if we're going to expect low SES children to hear it and harness those crucial CP, that building blocks, well, it better be the case that it's not just an error, right? That, our sample happened to find, right? It better be the case that low SES adults think that that's okay, and therefore will generate it when speaking to their children. And of course, this is something that we can test, we can evaluate, we can measure, and see how acceptable low SES adults find that trace violations compared to high SES adults, who we expect to not like them so much.